I'm going to finish out this one today from the channel Upper Echelon. I've never heard of this channel, never watched them before, but I saw this video recommended and it seemed pretty interesting. The disease of online politics. Cool little
intro.
This
video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire Upper Echelon community. Political division is a consistent and growing problem. Not just in America, but also globally, the issue of politics often creates conflict, disagreement, and distrust. Agencies, ideologies, candidates, and more often become a focal point of argumentation, social media debates, voices raised around the holiday meal table even, and bickering within online communities especially.
Yeah, that's one of the worst ones for family, is when you get different people in the family who are on completely opposing parts of the political aisle, and it's like, well, now if I invite both these guys to Thanksgiving, they're going to fight. And sometimes that makes it interesting, though. So you wind up inviting them all anyway, because you're family. And then they fight.
It's become normalized. But today, I want to take a very big step backwards and focus on the broader concept of politics, with no emphasis on any one particular side. Who are the people involved? Why are they involved? And using a trifecta of scientific studies with relevant examples, I want to make the case that modern politics itself is a mental disease. Probably the most common piece of feedback that I ever get on this channel is actually a question. People ask me, well, what can I do about it? And if you're talking about the world of dystopian technology, the answer is typically nothing. If, for example, you plug your phone into your car and all of your messages get instantly scanned, you can either buy a completely different vehicle from 20 or 30 years ago, or you accept that the practice has been normalized by almost every single major manufacturer, and you continue with your day. Very rarely does the simple act of raising awareness contribute to the death of a problem, but for politics, at least hopefully, awareness of what's happening behind the scenes directly impacts the ability for people involved to improve it. Just to reiterate this point, because I think it's very important, I will not be discussing any particular ideology. This is not us versus them group dynamics. It's an examination of everyone involved with the online world of political discourse. All right? This is not something to freak out about. It should be very enlightening, I hope. Let's get to it. Puzzle piece number 1 is a simple demonstration of the schism between political belief and economic reality. According to polling data from YouGov, this right here is a visual demonstration of political party voters in the United States and how they believe the economy is currently performing. Setting aside the very obvious discrepancy as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, what we see, very clearly demonstrated here, is that when the party controlling the White House shifts, so does the average interpretation of how the economy.
100%. As someone who is very middle of the pack with many things, where I have opinions on both left and right, seeing this political divide shift, I immediately saw everyone after 2020, 2021, Biden won, and then everybody who was, against Trump in his first term, they were all like, thank God we got the maniac out of the office. We're about to bring sanity back to the country. And then we had Biden's 4 years of craziness where the economy, I watched it get worse and worse and worse and worse. I was spending more money on the things I already spent on. I wasn't able to save as much money by the end of the year, each year over year. In fact, that number got smaller and smaller and smaller till it was very, very little. And then, just these first, we're at 9 months of Trump in office nearly. The amount of savings I've had this year is, even with injuries and being off work for part of it, I've had more savings this year than I did the past 2.5 combined. That's how bad Biden's economy actually was. Because if you were looking for, if you had your budget set and you didn't change your budget up because, you were already doing said things and that's how you did it because you already had put your budget together in the way you needed it. Well, all of a sudden, now you get to the end and you're like, oh, I only saved X amount of dollars this year. That's not very much, and that's not sustainable if it continued, and it really wasn't. I was not a Trump voter in 16. I was not a Trump voter in 21. In 2020, I was not voting for him. In fact, I didn't vote for Hillary or Biden in either of those either. I didn't vote Kamala in in the latest election. I voted Trump in the latest one because of the fact that from the left, they the Democrats, they had Biden drop out because of his poor performance in the debate. That was very well seen. The nation knew he was incompetent to be president any longer. And yet everybody still tried so hard to make him the president again until they realized in the debate he was not going to be able to do that. And then they just chose Kamala Harris in his place. Said, "Hey, the VP will step up and try to run. She'll do the thing," instead of giving Democrats a proper primary election to choose a better candidate than Harris. Harris, anytime you went to ask her about her policies and whatnot, she would just tell you, she would give you a word salad that really boiled down to, check my website, look at what it says there. And it's like, that's not how you do it. You say what you're going to do. Trump repeatedly, he is the most consistent person elected ever as president, I think. He consistently throughout the years was like, we need mass deportations. We got too many illegals here. They're coming in. They are taking the jobs, taking the houses, taking, the wages that you should be getting. And, companies that are hiring these people they're getting away with it. They're paying slave wages. They have all the power against their workers. When other cat.
Is performing. From November of 2020 through January of 2021, party control of the White House flips, obviously. And during that exact same 3-month period, voters belonging to those parties suddenly shift completely to the opposite side of the spectrum on whether or not the economy is getting worse or better. This monumental change has absolutely zero basis in reality. If you look at average inflation, there's no correlation whatsoever. Growth of GDP, same thing. Even the unemployment rate, once again, outside the obvious black swan event of the COVID pandemic, even the unemployment rate has absolutely zero correlating fluctuations that could ever justify half the country.
I think he's missing some in of those rates, inflation on things, because there was high levels of inflation reported after the fact of the matter, that information we should have received in the following months that preceded, the report. And it was reported that several different reports in 2023 and 24 from the Biden administration were underplaying the level of inflation. The months they were saying, "Oh, we only had 10% inflation at the craziest parts of some things," when in reality it was triple that. The inflation level was almost 35% in some categories, and that is absolutely unacceptable and insane.
Suddenly believing that the economy is getting worse, while the other half, who previously believed the same thing, spontaneously believe it's getting better. Fundamentally, it's a very simple concept. When my people are in control, things must be getting better, but when your people are in control, they must be getting worse. Sadly, it's a very common human perspective, it seems, but it's also laughably wrong, because economies at scale simply do not work that way, let alone at that speed during a 6-month window before and immediately after the change occurs. Point being,
as someone in the middle, more libertarian, a little bit conservative leaning, I will say this president is the first time in my lifetime, our history, that we have had things in the country improve. And worldwide, we've had more global peace with the president of the United States as Donald Trump versus any other president in our history. Democrats have the big joke that all Republicans want is big war, big government. They just want every bit of control. When in reality, all they really want is to give you a simple set of rules, and you follow those simple rules where everybody's happy, everybody's treated fairly, and, if you're not harming children, if you're not harming the elderly, you kind of can do whatever you want. To the point where if you're not harming individuals, It's kind of crazy when you take a step back, you look in the middle. As he was saying, when my party's in charge, things are better. When the other party's in charge, things are worse. I'm in the middle. I'm more libertarian than anything, than either of them. So my party has literally never in history been in charge. I would love to see what that could look like. What the ideal candidate who practices everything he preaches would do. And I'd be curious to see how the two sides, the two normal political parties, Democrat, Republican, would react to something like that, taking their power away. I'm sure both sides would freak out and hate it.
Per example number 1, political party voters are often completely disconnected from reality, believing that things are magically getting better or worse simply as a function of whether or not their party has control of the White House. Puzzle piece number 2 is where it starts getting a whole lot more interesting, because it begins to explain why and how that disconnection occurs. What if I said that ideological loyalty directly impairs your ability to understand basic reason? We all know that most people arguing about politics online feel like thick-headed morons, at least if you ask the people that disagree with them. But what if I said it's actually being studied scientifically? Before going further, today's video is brought to you by the longest private network and is...
Whoop.
Okay, back to it. This is a Swedish research paper right here titled, quote, Motivated Formal Reasoning, Ideological Belief Bias in Syllogistic Reasoning Across Diverse Political Issues, end quote. And for anyone who isn't aware, a syllogism is the process where you draw some kind of
I don't like it when he does that.
Out of two related propositions.
If only he kept his screens darker.
All snakes are reptiles, combines with...
Side note, a big proponent I am of dark mode across everything. Dark mode saves your eyeballs from bright searing lights. It helps keep eye strain down when you have darker backgrounds blasting at you instead of a white background the whole time, because your eyes are struggling to focus more when they've got so much extra light coming at them versus, oh, I have the black screen to contrast and I'm basically just seeing the words I need to read or the images I'm looking at around a dark background surrounding it all. Dark mode on everything, no matter what. Side tangent over.
2, all reptiles are cold-blooded, leading to, logically 3, all snakes are cold-blooded. Make sense? Well, it turns out when studying syllogistic reasoning skills for political issues, according to this research from Routledge, a subdivision of the academic publishing company Taylor and Francis, we find that, quote, participants correctly evaluated more syllogisms when the correct response was congruent with their ideology, particularly on hot-button issues, asylum to refugees, climate change, gender-neutral education, and school marketization, end quote. However, more is actually a very noticeable difference in this case. Simply put, blind adherence to a political ideology impairs one's ability to think rationally. Obviously, I'm going to link all of these different studies down below, and yes, they come from a wide range of institutions, but let's move on to a third example published in Nature pertaining to 8 different countries this time, titled, quote, Dark Personalities in the Digital Arena, How Psychopathy and Narcissism Shape Online Political Participation, end quote. This one's a little bit more tricky and it's rather long, but it can be very well summarized by, quote, individuals high in psychopathy and FOMO are consistently more likely to engage in online political activity, end quote. And further down, quote again, higher cognitive ability is uniformly associated with lower levels of online political participation, end quote. It's actually extremely well pronounced by...
Did he just say the smarter you, and in a way, did that not him, but the words he was reading in this article, did this article basically just say, or this paper say that that the smarter individual, those with higher cognitive abilities, are less likely to engage in political participation online? Meaning, everybody you're probably arguing with, whether you're arguing with someone on the left or whether you're arguing with someone on the right, every one of them is more likely to be retarded than not. That's hilarious.
People with low cognitive ability, as in reasoning, learning, attention, etc., and high rates of psychopathy, which means antisocial behavior, lack of empathy, manipulation, impulsivity, and aggression even. People with low cognitive ability and high psychopathy are far, not slightly, far more likely to be participating in online politics, and those with relatively high cognition are less so. Hopefully, it's beginning to make sense right now why it always feels like you're consistently arguing with idiots when it comes to online politics,
Because
because
you
you are.
are.
But it gets even better because our fourth and final example, our third trifecta research paper, rather, is this one from Yale University scientist Dan M. Kahan. Quote, Motivated Numeracy and Enlightened Self-Government. Not exactly the most descriptive title, I would say, but
Not
when you drill
really.
down on what the study contains, it very much is enlightening. The focus of the research is a very simple numerical problem.
Hmm.
1,111 participants were questioned about their mathematical reasoning abilities and their political views, after which they were asked to interpret the results of a fictional scientific study, which looked like this right here. Quickly summarized for people that are only listening to the video and not watching, it's a table of data showing the results of a skin cream being used to treat a rash. When taking the cream, 223 participants got better, while 75 got worse. But with the control group who didn't use the cream, 107 got better, while just 21 got worse. The simple explanation is percentages. The mathematically correct answer is that the skin cream does not work because the proportion of those that got better versus those that got worse is actually superior in the control group. Absolute numbers wise, it looks like the skincare works, but in reality, it doesn't. You would be much better off simply not using the cream and waiting to get better without it.
Hmm.
Here's the kicker.
That experiment could probably have some improvements. Do it with a actual, skin cream that'll help, and then maybe just some generic lotion that isn't rated to help it, or is literally just like a water-based thing you're putting on, simple to like lube or something, and then it washes off later. But like one of those, you could definitely do something different to where, whatever the control group's item to do, they're thinking they put on cream and then they're, believing it. I bet you that test could be much more studied, much more differently done, or you could do even different objects of things that are similar.
Which I find to be absolutely insane. When they shifted the question, instead of using a benign concept like skin cream, and layered in high tension, controversial, divisive political topics, participants began exhibiting dramatically reduced ability to use basic mathematics. When the premise was altered, now referring to concealed carry handguns and crime, they found that even those with superior mathematics skill began giving incorrect answers with overwhelming favoritism towards answers that reinforce their own existing political beliefs. Participants who were already pro gun control, as per existing ideology, answered almost perfectly, that is, when the answer reinforced their idea that a concealed carry ban would lower crime. Yet,
Yeah.
when the opposite was true, when the objectively correct answer from the table was that crime would go up after a ban, as per the numbers, they much more frequently got it wrong. Inversely, those favoring Second Amendment protections and the right to carry firearms were far more consistently correct when the answer favored the idea of crime rising after a ban, yet they were wrong to a near ridiculous proportion when the numbers concluded that a ban
Hmm.
lowered crime. Looking at the data in context, it's a perfect demonstration of how fanatical ideology and relentless commitment to a certain perspective of controversial political topics makes people significantly worse when it comes to critical thinking, basic reason, and even mathematics in this case. We see what we want to see, even when the facts of the matter openly contradict our politics. Bringing it full circle now, it feels like you're arguing with the lowest common denominator of humanity when you engage in the world of online politics, because you are.
Yeah, I definitely had that at my fair share of things earlier today when I was probably for a good hour, maybe hour and a half, trying to just give this guy facts repeatedly, new facts, and he wasn't getting it. I eventually gave up because this person's obviously too retarded to get a true point with facts and logic, and so I was just done with it. But man, I completely understand where this guy's coming from, where he's like, yeah, when you think you're arguing with an idiot online, you 100% are. Because the smart people aren't arguing online. They looked at the comment that the dumb person left and saw, oh, that person's an idiot. I'm going to stop conversing with them. Or I won't even entertain the thought. And then they'll just move on with their day. I have so many times where I'll in the heat of the moment, I'll read something, it'll give me a little bit of an emotional impact, and I'll start typing out a response, and I'll get like halfway through, and I'll just be like, yeah, I don't care anymore. Because I've relaxed down. My brain has had a second to think and put even a few of my thoughts into words, and I go, oh, actually, I'm fine. This person won't even it won't even make a difference. Or I even read and discover, oh, actually they might be onto something. That one happens a lot less frequent, but it still happens occasionally.
Except you might be one of them too. Politics is capable of warping our cognitive abilities in a way that we don't even perceive. And if you factor in the reality that online political discourse is highly populated with those that already have low cognitive ability and high psychopathy, because that demographic is more attracted to the activity in the first place, what you have is a perfect incubation space for the disease of politics. However, some good news, some very good news in my opinion, is that unlike the world of dystopian technology or governmental overreach, awareness, big air quotes, awareness, actually does help immediately solve the problem here. Using myself as an example on this one, I have routinely engaged in the world of online politics to the detriment of my own mental health at times. But having done all this research for myself, I will most likely always have a little voice in the back of my mind, making it much more difficult for me to continue doing so. I will now always be questioning whether or not I am that lowest common denominator, because I know how warped and twisted perceptions can be.
I also have wondered that a few times. Like, is the information that I've been given by between independent journalists and mainstream media, is the things they're sharing, do they line up with the facts and the everything else that's been put in front of me? A lot of times, not really. And it's one of those where you're looking at different news to follow, and you watch a CNN coverage of the protests and, let's say, LA's riots for the immigration when they sent the National Guard out there earlier this year. You had people in the streets burning Waymo cars. They're just a driverless car. That car did nothing to you, but you decided to stop it in the middle of the road and set it on fire. Because. And then you get the others around it who are, throwing things at cops and ICE agents, and it's like, you're actively committing crimes to try to stop what's happening here, and you're destroying your own cities. Like, some of them were actually taking, like, some metal poles and such and beaten down into the curbs of the concrete to break off chunks of rocks to throw at people. It's like, you're actively, like, literally destroying your cities for this. I think you need to step back and take a look at what your politics have done to your own brain.
And I'll be much more apprehensive of spending my time arguing with people when I know that to do so makes me, myself, the low cognition, high psychopathy moron. My goal in making this video, all of this is to say, is that I hope I won't be the only one. And for anyone who made it this far, all the way to the end, I probably won't be, because you can't unring a bell. Once you know something, you know it. That's it. Hopefully this video makes a difference in a world of hypercharged online political disagreements where people don't even think through a full sentence to the end. But even if not, I gave it a shot. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below.
Yeah, check out all his links. I'll have his video in the description like always. He did a good job. We'll all hit the subscribe button here. This dude, he doesn't even have 1 million subs yet. So, hey, maybe my few viewers can help him tick up that figure a little bit more. Anyways, I hope you've had a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.